everyone. I'm Sammy. I'm the marketing coordinator at Softcrylic. Thank you for joining our invite-only webinar here about the demise of the third-party cookie. I would love to introduce you to our amazing panelists. So joining us today, we have Julianne Jennings, the Director of Business Intelligence at Healthgrades, Suzanne Smith, Digital Transformation Global IT Digital Marketing Business Partner at Bayer Crop Science. And then from Softcrylic, we have Jerry Helou, our Senior Director of Data Activation, John-Paul Behrens, or JP, our Digital Analytics Sensei, and then our host, Senior Digital Analytics Consultant, Geoff Ogrin. So take it away, guys.
All right, thanks, Sammy. I'm Geoff. I'm your host today. And first, I want to thank everyone for joining today. This is a topic that I'm really excited to dive into. You know, just a couple of things. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We will try to get to them at the end of this if there is time permitting. If not, we'll follow up via email with any questions you might have. And then second, we're going to be recording this session as well, and we'll send out a link to where you can find it to all the invites. So with that, before I dive into the panel, I just wanted to give everyone a preview of what this Google announcement we're talking about and the actual demise of the third-party cookie. So I'm just going to walk through a slide real fast to kind of level set with everyone where we're at. So Google has really had three significant announcements over the last 2 years. The first one was around April 2018, where there was a deprecation, where they announced the deprecation of the Google ID or the double-click ID in the DCM log files. This started around that time because if you remember 2 years ago, in May 2018 is when GDPR took into effect. So it immediately stopped in the EU in May 2018, and they're globally going to deprecate this Google ID soon, and the date is May 2020, although I haven't seen any confirmation of that. Why this was an important announcement is a lot of marketing measurement platforms and tools leverage this log file method of reporting. And the Google ID was really a device level identifier for that. So if you think about it, if you wanted to tie impressions and clicks and site-side activity to a user, you could get these DCM log files. So that was the first major announcement. Next, around May 2019, there was a Chrome third-party privacy control enforcement for all third-party cookies. And this policy really forced third-party cookies to set a labeling standard and a secure flag, which meant it had to use secure protocol or HTTPS. This labeling policy included three categories. I'm not getting into details, but it was real strict, lax, and none. And depending on the labeling policy, determine how the cookie interacts with the domain it's on. And Google really wanted to enforce this policy to prevent malicious tracking and data leakage with cross-site cookies. And actually, this policy was supposed to go into place with the Chrome 80 release, which was February 4th, 2020. However, they rolled it back due to the actual COVID situation, and they don't have an actual time frame yet. It's probably coming soon. And then finally, in January of this year, Google dropped the bomb and announced that it will no longer accept third-party cookies. And the target date is 2020. So with third parties becoming obsolete, there will really be a shift into using this browser API in Chrome that's called the Privacy Sandbox. And I'm going to go through it in detail later in this panel. But what this will do is it'll allow publishers and advertisers to really continue to target to consumers without violating any privacy. Since third-party cookies are really the foundation, most marketing technologies build, target, and measure, this announcement is really gonna change the way digital analytics and advertising works today. And Google is actually holding really firm by this 2022 target. It was actually recently the WC3 asked Google to push it back due to COVID, and Google held strong and said, no, we're going to target 2022 as our date. And I don't have an exact time frame. They aren't saying that yet, but you know, at some point in 2022 will happen. So I hope that sets the stage a little bit. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to hop into the panel. And what I want to do with this panel is explore really three areas. So what happens when third-party cookies go away? The benefits from a user and consumer privacy perspective, and really the rise of first-party data. So for my first question, Chrome currently, it commands 70% of browser share on desktop, which is pretty significant, and 41% on mobile. If you add in Safari, which already blocks third-party cookies, we're talking about 90% browser share. So this is truly going to disrupt the DMPs, data management platforms of the world that are fundamentally built on third-party cookies, measurement tools for view-through attribution and multi-touch attribution, reach and frequency capping, and then site-side analytics applications that are hosted on third-party. So I'm gonna pick on Jerry first. My first question for you. I'm really struggling to see how DMPs will evolve and work, around this. DMPs rely on third-party cookies to capture the media space and site space and then activate on it. So how do you think, what's your opinion? How do you think, DMPs will evolve around this?
Yeah, thank you for putting that as a first question, because that's been a pressing question from a lot of clients. I think DMPs have been going through a transformation period for a period of time. I think a lot of them have been adapting the idea that they need to move away from cookies into some device ID or some consumer ID that can be used across different domains or can be shared. Did any of the DMPs get it right yet? I don't think so. I think what we have been seeing is a migration from what a DMP uses today to what CDPs use in terms of using, whether it's a global ID or using a PII data point that is respected within the space where we are not able to backward engineer or reverse engineer that ID. I think in general, if I have to predict what's going to happen, is that DMPs need to establish a better relationship with their partners. So for example, we have seen LiveRamp is doubling down on their identity link ID, which is an ID that they're able to share across all their clients, and it's connected within a safe haven to a physical person. So moving away from cookies and device IDs into a global ID that different vendors will agree on. So that's one way. Other way is you've seen DSPs and marketplaces go together and agree on a common ID. Like I think Trade Desk has been working with AppNexus and some others within the programmatic advertising to figure that out. But no one yet has agreed because everyone wants to have control over that. I think it's going to disrupt the space in general. I think it's good. I do think publishers will have a stronger say in this. And that's why I know me and Julianne have been looking at that space for a while. And we've been looking at new and other DMPs. So maybe I can turn to this, Julianne, just see your perspective too, given that you depend a lot on DMP today.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. So I think the DMP as a third-party data activation technology has definitely shifted as we know it with this new change. However, I do believe that a DMP will still be an integral part of publishers and brands' technology stack. The brands and the technologies will just be shifting the way that they use this technology, shifting more into really doubling down on using their first-party data, and site-side personalization will still need to occur. And you can use your DMP for that. So I just think the technology that was a little antiquated, that people were not so sure about, like third-party data sets, third-party non-deterministic data sets, we won't be using those as much. So.
Okay. Cool. So next question I have, and Suzanne, I'm going to look at you. So view through attribution is really going to be impacted. If you look at it, you see a display ad out in the space, don't click on it, come back to the site, 10 days later. That's all determined based on third-party cookies. And then MTA attribution, of course, will be impacted, following the consumer journey, which is all foundation on third-party cookies. Do you think companies, I will say companies last few years have really focused on, view through attribution, MTA, to optimize their media. Do you think we're going to be shifting to more of a last click, last touch methodology with this? Or do you think we're going to try to, how are you going to evolve with this?
Yeah, I personally think it's going to be really challenging for a lot of brands to fall back on that last click attribution model. I think that is a model that obviously served a purpose, very early on with digital marketing. But if you relied solely on that, you could certainly be making some decisions that could have a dramatic impact or maybe a negative impact on the customer experience or your overall marketing investment. And so there's a lot of watch outs with that. Not saying that it won't have some value and you'll be able to understand an aspect of your digital marketing campaign, but the reality is we have moved away from that and tried to move towards more custom models and other avenues to help support critical decision making. And I just don't think that those models today will be something that digital marketing will fall back to start using again. I think we're really going to take bigger investments and find more innovative ways to try to solve what's happening within the customer experience and the journey and how we can continue delivering on the right message at the right time to the right user.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Last click only tells you so much of the story. So
yeah, and I want to add. Yeah, go ahead.
I still think that last click can be a good proxy metric for audience quality and for how a consumer is engaging with a brand. I think that, yes, it will be difficult, Suzanne, but I do also think that marketing departments who are set up to be very operational in nature, like, hey, let's just get the campaign out, or let's just activate on this campaign and not actually see the business intelligence behind it. I think there's going to be a greater shift for marketing departments to invest in their business intelligence and their analytics departments as an integral part of their marketing department because of this shift.
Yeah, makes sense.
I would also, one thing here I would like to add is, a lot of companies still use last click, attribution. Whether they be big or small, I don't think, it's going to be the worst thing in the world to adopt that. Again, I don't think we will end up adopting that. I think there's going to be a lot of creativity from technology standpoint with the companies that are trying to facilitate all this measurement. I think I don't think it's the end of the world. It's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I want to say too is that this is good. I think I know we might be shifting this, but it's time, I think, for a disruption with attribution. And if removing cookies the way that's happening is going to be the catalyst to just reinvent the way we do attribution, the way that we take action on it, then be it. I'm actually more excited for that than worried.
Right. And there's even the case that sometimes the cookie-based measurement isn't that accurate itself, right?
True.
You really go down into the edge and really understand it. So I'm sure someone somewhere is going to come up with the right approach, and it's going to benefit the industry as a whole. I think it's a good thing for sure.
All right, so I wanted to move on. I talked a little bit about Privacy Sandbox here, but for everyone listening in who might not have much knowledge on it, I just want to give a quick overview of Privacy Sandbox, and then I'm going to come back to the panel and ask some questions around Privacy Sandbox. So let me share my screen again. Okay. So You know, essentially Privacy Sandbox is going to be a group of browser APIs that live within the Chrome web browser, and it will really enable and intermediaries to load in data and then pull out aggregated results. And I really look at this as like a data clean room where Google is going to limit what you can and can't pull out of it. There's still, I just want to be clear, there's still a lot of unknowns right now out released yet. Google's still developing it, but Google is providing some documentation on it. And what I wanted to do before I get into Privacy Sandbox and how it will work, I want to just kind of show you an ad measurement example in today's Chrome browser, and then show how it's going to shift really quickly. So today I'm on this outdoor blog site, .com, and there's an ad location on the site. When an ad is requested, it usually goes through an ad exchange, and then they bid on the ad. Because I'm on an outdoor blog site, most likely the target outdoor apparel site will win that bid. And this is all done based on, cookie IDs. So at the time the web page is firing, this bid is happening in real time. And because me as a persona, I'm interested in outdoor apparel, I won the bid here. So what happens is a DSP will send a creative to the publisher. That publisher will load in the actual ad as well as an impression tracker. And that impression tracker is going to look for a third-party cookie, or it's, if it doesn't see the cookie, it's going to try to set its own cookie. And for this purpose, we're just going to tie this all to a cookie ID of 123 UID. And what happens is, because it's a third-party cookie, it could track you across sites. So what happens is a few days later, I come to outdoorsite.com. It's in the back of my head. I visit the site and I eventually convert. That cookie ID holds all my relevant information. So impressions, clicks, site activity, conversions. That's fundamentally how it works today. Now, without third-party cookies, I'm trying to give you a scenario of what I think it will look like using the browser API that I keep talking about, which is Privacy Sandbox. And this is just me speculating right now. This is nothing set in stone. But what will happen is there'll be an ad location similar to what we're looking at. And the Privacy Sandbox will hold campaign level information. It will hold targets, so like audience targets, and it will hold an actual advertiser declaration. So this advertiser declaration is going to be very important because that allows an advertiser to go in and pull data about the ads that they're showing. So for instance, this campaign was outdoor-1. It targeted outdoor apparel buyers based on my browser interests. And then I have an advertiser that's declarated. And this ad saw 15,000 impressions, 150 clicks, and 10 conversions. The biggest point is it's all aggregated reporting. There's nothing that allows you to tie it to an individual user. And this is what Google's really trying to do. So then an ad tech measurement platform can go in and pull the reports for the advertiser and send the reports out to them. So just real fast, I want to go through a little bit about the browser APIs, and there's really 5 categories. The first category is combating spam and fraud. And this will be a trust token API. And essentially what it will do, it'll split users into 2 groups, trusted and untrusted. And this will really help with aid in detecting fraud. And it's going to work like the Google Capture program. The other ones are around ad conversion measurement, which I just went through. There's going to be an aggregated reporting API, which is really used for frequency capping and reach. So right now, to see how many ads are hitting users and how many you're able to reach, that's all done by third-party cookies today. Google understands this, that advertisers are going to need for this, so they build an API for that. And then the next one is really the conversion measurement API, which I just went through. And it's going to allow for data, click and impression data based on your advertisers and campaigns. But the very important note here is Google is going to cap the amount of time that information is allowed in the browser. So it could be 7 days, it could be 10, it could be 30. And they're also going to cap the amount of metadata. Because what they want to do is they want to prevent you, metadata about the campaign, because they want to prevent you from timestamping anything. And then the most important is really around ad targeting. So there's flocks. It's called federated learning cohorts. And what this will do is it'll segment users based on Chrome browsing behavior. Google hasn't really said how this is going to work. There's going to be a machine learning component to this. But if you think of flock, it's think of like a flock of geese. It's a group of users on the browser. And then the next one is already deprecated, which is PIGIM, which is private interest groups. This API was really focused around remarketing based targeting. So, you visit a site and then, you leave the site and then we send a display ad or an email communication to you. This is actually deprecated, so I don't know where it's going to fall into place yet. And then Turtle Dove, which is 2 uncorrelated requests and locally executed decision on victory, is really API intended to move ad auction logic from remote servers at the ad exchange to actual local browser. So that way, Chrome will then learn your interests based on what ads are getting bidded on. And then real fast, there's 2 more. There's one to prevent device fingerprinting. There's a privacy budget and a willful IP blindness. This will allow for consumers to go in and say, hey, I don't want to send my IP address, to users or to sites. And then really the next one is first party declaration. And this is important. Firefox already has something similar to this, but this will allow publishers with multiple domains. So think of it, Apple and iCloud, same publisher, to declare themselves as a single first party. So if you're a publisher with multiple domains, this is going to be really important. So that's a high level of Privacy Sandbox. I want to hop back into the panel now and start asking some questions on it. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Man, I thought Adobe had some amazing acronyms, but Google wins the acronyms with these API names. What was that one? Turtle Dove?
Turtle Dove. Turtle Dove.
And flock was good.
Flock.
Too.
Flock. I like flock. I think it makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, Suzanne, I'm going to start with you. I mean, this is still very early on, but, have you been talking to your media agencies, your ad operation folks around, how we're going to, shift to using this Privacy Sandbox?
Yeah, so we have some really great agency partners, and obviously Softcrylic is supporting us on the implementation side. And I would say at this point where we are is just really educating ourselves on what's changing and really then taking that in and working together to figure out, okay, what do we need to account for on our implementation side, but also operationally over the next 2 years. This is going to be a journey, and by no means do we anticipate to have everything solved in the next few months. And I think that's just kind of where we are right now. And I'll also share that we are making heavy investments in our first party data capture strategy and documenting that, because I know that's going to be a foundational piece in order to help support all of the digital agencies that we work with globally. And I think that's going to be a key factor in moving us operationally into a different way of working.
Makes sense. And Julianne, I mean, Healthgrades is really, publishing side of the house. It's greatly going to impact you from a publishing perspective. Have you started having those conversations yet of how do we start accounting for this?
We have started those conversations. We also, a lot like Bear, are just surveying the landscape, getting as educated as possible. But we started working and analyzing this initiative late last year and putting resources to it. So I think, being on the publisher side, the onus is a little bit going to be more difficult for brands, whereas, our site has contextual advertising that, doesn't go away. So, but yes, the answer is we are investing resources and thinking about this.
Gotcha.
And I also think that we've been working with Google all brands have been working with Google for years. Maybe it was for your ad serving. Maybe it was with your DSP. Maybe it was to track, impressions. So it's not completely new to advertisers to be working with Google and for Google to be making changes. When they made the change with removing that Google ID in order to be able to stitch together cross-device targeting. Like, we're always learning to adapt to the changes that Google has. And so this isn't as surprising to us, and we're prepared for this type of change.
So I'm I'm curious about something. What you just described, it sounds to me a lot like Google is coming in and saying, I care about privacy. I want to make sure we're not able to fingerprint and reverse engineer how someone, why did they go there or where they go next. But if you come and invest with my environment, such as AdHub and some of my other tools, you can do these things to a certain extent. So is it true that this is what Google is trying to do, or is Google doing this out of good heart and concern around privacy to say, I just care about privacy and I have the resources that I'm willing to share? I mean, is there a cost associated with this, investment associated with it? How does it, I don't know, Geoff, if you have any insight on that, or maybe Google has not figured that out yet.
You know, you actually read my mind because that was going to be my next question. I mean, to me, you have to work with Google now, and you have to, you know, to collect data, to target now, everything is going to have to run through their privacy sandbox. And to me, it feels a little bit too much like Google's owning the environment, is how I feel about it. I think they're playing it from a way it does protect privacy control and individualistic identifiers. But to me, that is concerning to me. You know, they're basically owning all the data.
Yeah, I worry about that piece.
I mean, they do, but then you could say Facebook owns all the data and Amazon owns all the data. They know all of your shopping habits if you're a customer of them. So I don't know that a lot has shifted. I think Google already did have all the data before. And anyone, as you were saying, Geoff, 70% of people were on a Chrome device. So I just think that they changed the rules of engagement. And then they're like, okay, if you want to have measurement, you need to jump through these extra hoops. If you want to have attribution, you need to jump through these extra hoops. And we're now going to do it in a more privacy and safe manner for the consumer, doing this on those flocks, as you stated, that those cohorts of people. So they're like, great, we already had your data, but we're now going to do it for a safer way for the consumer.
This is really interesting.
Sorry, you go, Jerry.
No, I was going to comment. I never thought of it the way that you said it, Julianne, that this always was like, Google always had its own walled garden, which was everything outside of the other walled gardens, right? Like there's no, we were just talking about my garden in the back. So probably I'm never going to have a place where, as an advertiser or publisher, except my own property, my own website, is going to be for me, that all the other walled gardens don't have access to. But the second I go to the open internet, outside of Facebook and Amazon, but on another company that is advertising or a publisher, then Google says, this is my area and I'm going to be the governor and help make sure that no foul play is happening there. And yeah, I think that's great, but I would love to see from Google the separation between them being the facilitator of the advertising and publishing versus the privacy controller and governor. I think they need to work on that to change that image, because it's hard for a lot of my clients to trust the people I'm spending money with. I'm using 70% using their browser. Also the people controlling what I can measure, how efficient that advertising was. Doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it's almost like they're doing their own homework, and what is it? They're doing their homework and then grading it themselves, right? You know, and at the end of the day, I think somebody has to do it, right? Whether it's Facebook or Apple or Google or Amazon, like we said. You know, I think that Google sees itself as a key player and a pioneer and a leader, right? And you know, there are trends happening in the industry from a privacy standpoint, from a consumer awareness standpoint, and even from a technology standpoint. You know, I think the privacy sandbox by Google, I think it makes me feel good because I know there's a replacement to third-party cookies. They're thinking about it. How does that translate to the, you know, at the end of the day, I think We're going to have to learn how to develop APIs, server-side implementation, which is, of tags, right? I'm thinking about it from a tagging perspective. Right now we put pixels on people's websites, right? How is that going to look like with the privacy sandbox? I think there may be opportunity to explore that from a server-side implementation and how that ties in with data privacy. So all these things together, if you take one individually, maybe it doesn't make sense, but all of it together, I think it kind of, it paints a good picture. And I think Google, they're in a leading position. There's very little we can do, I feel, to take that away from Google.
I mean, unless we empower the users. I just saw a question from Joe saying, like, what is the views on citizen-owned data? And I think that should be the future. I should have the control of saying, hey, I got to healthgrades.com. Healthgrades asked me, what are you willing to share with me? And I say, what do I get in return? And you say, you're going to get a website that's going to tell you what is your condition, or whether you should go test it, or if you have symptoms. And I say, okay, this is great. Let me tell you where I've been in the last few weeks on the internet. So I can just say, here you go. Tell me now, what should I care about? So citizen-owned data, I think, yeah, we should have that control. Curious for our panel, Suzanne and Julianne, what's your thoughts on how that can change or benefit your business?
Yeah, I definitely support it. I think it's really important for an end user to be able to decide when they share it, how they share it, because otherwise you just don't know, how it's going to be used. And, for us, I think what we've seen is that our customer base, obviously, they're comfortable with sharing things about their business and their fields, right? And they want the data to be able to help them make better decisions about what they're doing. But there has to be the right value exchange digitally for that end user to say, yes, I would like to give you this information about me personally in exchange for something that will benefit me and my business. And so, we are definitely being very cautious about, how we use that data and how we're bringing that together to better support our customers. But I think it's really important that they have the ultimate decision on what they do share and how they share it.
Yeah, Jerry, I definitely am in support of citizen-based data and controlling your data. However, not all consumers interact directly with a publisher site or with a brand specifically. I think this might work really well with retailers or travel companies where people log in more often. And so there does need to be that, quid pro quo of data usage. However, some, sites or some brands that are used as, reference, or people might not know that they're on a specific site. They might be on Google and they might see information. Like they might see a doctor listing and not realize that they're actually looking at Healthgrade properties. They're on Google. So they're not going to be giving information to Healthgrade specifically. So I think it definitely works with some brands that have that more direct relationship with a consumer. But sometimes people don't want to give their information for a site that they might go to once a year or a couple times a year.
So Julianne, you touched on something that I think is going to be key in this new world. Maybe consumers don't log in on publisher sites, right? I think that is going to have to, change. I think websites are going to have to establish more authentication or login methods and make it compelling to the user why they need to log in, right? Because it makes sense for some e-commerce websites, right? They log in so that they can get their the products from the cart, right, loaded back in there. But
like Amazon, you're always logged in, right? Like
and some websites are already doing that, right? And I think that's going to become more of the norm. And again, that goes back to the first party data. There's a lot of opportunity, which I see as exciting. It's a good thing, right? For site analytics. I'm a digital analytics guy. To me, this is great, right? We're going to start tagging a lot more, you know, and learning more about consumers on the websites, you know, but in an intelligent manner and in a data privacy first as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is actually a good segue because I did want to kind of talk about, you know, the rise of first-party data. You know, I feel like this might trigger companies to kind of have a first-party data strategy approach, you know, and I think the site-side applications like Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, you know, you're kind of sitting on a gold mine of data, you know, right now.
Yeah.
So do you think this is going to trigger, and JP, this question for you, do you think this is going to trigger more clients we work with to just really take a first-party data strategy approach and then try to activate on that data?
I think it will. I think that, you know, we have to go back to what Jerry was saying at the beginning, which is, you know, moving from the third party to an ID level, or a consumer ID, right? Method of authentication. I think that websites, no matter what industry you're in, you need to get people to log in. But more than that, you know, you need to start thinking about some of the basics and take them a little bit seriously. Like, for example, something as boring as content taxonomy. I cannot talk about a more boring topic. You know, tag your content appropriately. Your content has to have metadata and you need to group it in certain ways. It's so boring, it makes me go to sleep, but it's going to be so important now, right? And websites have the opportunity to own that. And then how do you act on it? I mean, I think there's an issue of, you know, of volume, and I'll pass this over to Jerry to see, you know, what he thinks. You know, I mean, we can capture so much about the website, about people on your website, but then how do you know, is that enough data, right?
So something you said a couple of times, and I think was repeated, was this idea of authentication. And I think this is probably what Google with Chrome is trying to imply eventually, to say, well, we know like it's passwords and people logging in. Like, I think it's logging in into every website I go to and remembering my passwords, even if they are in password 1 or LastPass. It's a process and might turn me away. So Google might say, well, you know, if they're on Chrome, I can just tell you later that this is the same person. So they're authenticated, which worries me more about Google, but leave that to another day. I think first-party data has always been, you know, something that every client has been working on. I mean, every engagement I'm in, one of the top things that we always do is, how do we take action, or how do we bring first-party from 17 different data lakes into somewhere online that the marketer can use? The problem is that I think a lot of the vendors are making it, although it's really cheaper to have safe and cheaper storage, but also it's becoming expensive to bring in your first-party data to deploy it on your own digital properties. So there needs to be a place where give the clients and consumers the ability to bring in more data without being punished or paying extra money for every time they want to bring that data on site. So a lot of clients, what they're doing is, instead of just pumping it into a DMP, they're exposing it within the data layer, right? So that it's there, it can be used, it can be picked from, but they don't have to pay extra beyond just, like, you know, their internal teams and internal processes. But I think we're going to be expediting and doubling down on first party and also second party, which is the friendly first party, where a lot of clients, such as whether it's the Home Depot and Samsung, or the different products of the brand and the advertiser coming together to really benefit from a relationship and be able to activate their first party on different websites. I think this is going to be, it's already been happening, and it's just going to be accelerated more.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Jerry. I think understanding the kind of relationships and the partnerships that you have will be critical for brands, businesses, and finding like-minded brands to partner with will be key. to expanding. So great marketers were always utilizing their first party data, and they probably didn't get caught up in the allure of, third party data. If they did, it was always the tests, but their day job was always first party data. But I think we're going to see a larger shift moving to second party data and finding those like-minded partnerships.
Yep. And I think the other thing that we're going to see too is companies take a good look at their digital landscape that they're obviously putting out there in front of consumers, and really start evaluating, could this be a utility driver? So when you think about the data you want to collect, you're going to want to make sure that you have experiences that will serve a purpose and a need for the customer, because that will get them to continue to engage. It will also, of course, help grow that membership base, or the number of people who are logging in, and you're going to need that to sustain your first party data collection over a longer period of time. So it's a very different strategy and approach to your entire digital experiences that you're delivering.
Very true. I agree.
There's one more aspect to this, which it's a little bit more technical, but I think it's worth mentioning it. Companies that have multiple domains, right? They need to start thinking about, how does this impact, right? You have the ability, at least with Adobe, to track users via third-party cookies, right? Or a third-party server. And one, recommendation that we're talking about with some of our clients that have these multiple domains is kind of moving away from, having one main domain or to capture all of your cookies, and then maybe having multiple domains, each one being, collecting data at a first party basis instead of like a friendly third party, right? So that means a lot of C names, a lot of that. And then on the flip side of that is I've seen some companies thinking more about, maybe we need to roll into a single domain strategy, so instead of having multiple domains, spread out across the company, everything in one single domain. I don't know, I don't think that works for every situation, but these are some technical considerations that I think people should be thinking about as well, because it's going to impact the way data gets collected, right? Like if Google stops accepting third-party cookies, then your Adobe Analytics, which is on a third-party server, is going to stop collecting data as well, right?
Unless you move like server side, start managing, having like a single location, which is managing your IDs and the ability when someone comes to the site, server side, you're checking, did they go to any of your previous sites? Did they have an ID in there? Check their local storage. I think I agree with you. But I feel like it's time for us to become less dependent on third-party cookies and third-party data. Like enough. I feel we abuse the heck out of it. Let's just start making sense of the data we have. We have people that are coming to the sites today, giving us so many good information, the way they're reading, the amount of time they're spending, what they're looking at, the questions, the searches. These are good signals that many times we barely use them. We use them for like one-dimensional like segmentation. Let's just invest a little more time in taking these signals and turn them into meaningful first-party indicators that we can take action on, or we can test with, right? Like, why do we depend so much on an unreliable third-party source to tell me that this person is a female who makes over 100K, while coming on the site, it might be completely different. I don't want to take that chance anymore.
Yeah, or you did an overlap analysis in your DMP and you found that a segment was both male and female. Yep. Like, did any marketer really say, hey, like I did these third-party data tests and they were just performing amazingly, so much better than my first-party data? I don't think that was happening. I think that there was a huge allure of it. I think third-party data partners had amazing pitches, but when you actually put it and went to test out the data, did it do everything it said it was going to do? I mean, Suzanne, you can probably speak to that. Like, have you been overly impressed with how your third-party data has performed?
Yeah, in past life, I can say that we have, you see the fall off, and then you're thinking, okay, well, what happened there? Why do we not have that investment? We're seeing, you know, that go as far as we thought it would, you know. So it was a constant challenge just trying to figure out what was really happening. So yeah.
All right, guys. So we're a little over time. I know we could probably talk like 2 more hours on this topic. So we're definitely gonna have to do this again. But I think this was like awesome. You know, I learned so much just from talking to everyone and putting this on. So first, just want to thank the amazing panel. Thank you guys for doing this. And thanks everyone for listening in.